Shalom family. I'm going to be talking about something that I believe is very important, raising young women here in this country. In America, it presents a challenge with raising young women because of all of the negativity that we see aimed at so-called black women in general. And so when you get to our younger generation, they are faced with all kinds of things and negative role models and obstacles. One being the shortage on so-called black men. Even on a high school or junior high school level, our young black girls are faced with not being considered attractive to young black males because of other women that they would prefer to be with. Okay, you hear about all of our young girls twerking and unwed mothers and teenage drinking, lesbianism, and all kinds of things that they're being faced with. I remember G. Craig Lewis talked about, in one of his videos, he talked about how our young black girls are being hurt at an early age by young black men, and so they are being turned on to homosexuality or lesbianism as an option. You see, with all of this pressure from every angle, we hear all of this negative stuff about raising young black girls here in this country. I want to talk about the positive side of things, okay? I have a lot of daughters, and as a mother, I feel at ease right now because they're still kind of young. Of course, I have one that is grown, and Sophia is just about there, but most of them are, I still feel like there's some time to not think about them being adults, okay? But for those that are older, I do have concerns for them, but we've raised them a certain way. We've raised our girls to the point where they are, first of all, not out here looking, right? Of course, my older daughter, she's grown. She's already out on her own. She's already made her choices and decisions in life. But like with Sophia, for instance, and Rebecca's not too far behind. She's 14, about to be 15. So I guess even with her, I would say that, in the next five or more years, that they will be ready for marriage, okay? Could be sooner depending on the Most High and what His will is, okay? But with the way we've trained our daughters, we've trained them in a certain way. We've trained them to be very, very independent, okay? We've trained them, and when I say independent, I'm not talking about no female feminism, I don't need a man type stuff. We've trained them to be independent in terms of being able to take care of their household, being able to earn money, being able to take care of their husbands, right? Because many times, if you have a woman who doesn't have a certain amount of independence, she will even depend on her husband to do everything for her, right? You want a young woman to be raised to be well-rounded in the truth, in the word, and in being able to take care of her household. When you look at the Proverbs 31 woman, when you look at her, this is a very busy woman. This is not someone who doesn't know what to do. This is not someone who is clueless, sitting around clueless, cute and clueless. This is not what she is. The Proverbs 31 woman is a businesswoman. She's a mother. She's a wife. And she even looks after her servants, you see, if she has them. She's not a woman who's waiting for everyone to do everything for her. And so that's what I mean when I say we've raised our daughters to be independent. I want my daughters to know how to look after their household in such a way to where if their husband is working outside of the home, that they can fully function in things. They can have everything in the house together the way it's supposed to be. Not saying that from time to time there won't be a little mess to clean. I'm not talking about that superficial stuff. I'm talking about taking care of the bills and making sure that everything that the household needs is there, and if it's not there, his order is on his way, or she's making preparations to get it, or even knowing what the household needs. You know what I'm saying? Say for instance, if there comes a time where you may need a printer, okay? You don't want to be a wife that has to be told, oh, we need a printer so we can do this, that, and the other. You can say, okay, we're going to get a printer because I would like to be able to print out this, that, and the other. I know that's something so simple that I'm saying, but I'm trying to make a point that some women act so helpless. We don't want to act helpless to where we need a man to complete our thoughts, or we need a man to do everything for us. You can't wash clothes, you can't change diapers, you can't do your own hair, you can't cook, you can't clean, you can't do anything. You got to get help on every end. I don't want my daughters to be that kind of wife. I want my daughters to be wives that are going to be really true helpmeets or helpmates. I want my daughters to be able to take care of their children and their husbands and have a well-rounded household, right? I want them to be able to love their husbands and show love to him. The way we raise our daughters now, they are so to the point where they know things to do that some young women don't know. You see, our daughters know how to research herbs and things, and what they need to do to heal certain illnesses or sicknesses or body aches. You see, they know how to cook and bake. They know how to clean. They know how to get business. You know what I'm saying? They know how to tend to children. You see, these are things that we instilled in them over the years. You know, motherhood is a full-time job. This is something that you have to invest in so that when your daughters are of age, they're kind of mimicking you. They are little yous. Now, if your daughter grows up to be something that is contrary to what you are, you have to look at the environment, or you have to look at the influences. And this is why we advocate for homeschool, because public school can definitely damage or tarnish anyone. Whether you're a young man or a young woman, public school can play a very role in terms of destroying what parents are putting in. Television, movies, music, all of that can destroy things as well. And so what we want to encourage you to do is take an active role in raising your daughters. There are things that we as mothers have to make sure that our daughters are informed on at an early age. You don't want to wait till they get out of your hands or out of your reach or out of your from under your care before you try to instill these values in them. I mean, you look at my daughters around here, for instance, they know how to do everything we can do pretty much, right? My daughters, they know how to wash clothes. They know how to cook. They know how to clean. You know, they know how to operate computers and all kinds of things, gardening, taking care of children. They know how to do these things because we've instilled those things in them. Now, a lot of people will say, well, I remember our oldest daughter, she asked us a question. I think she was about maybe 12 years old when she asked this question. She could have been a little bit older. But she said, when did it come about that children have to do chores? I told her, I said, try back in the Bible days. Children have been doing chores for thousands of years, you see, because she went to a friend of hers house and their mom didn't make them do any chores. And so she thought it was kind of strange that, well, why is it that I have to do chores? Because my friends don't have to do chores. This is why it's important, too, that you watch who your children hang around, right? Because you try to instill certain values in your children, and other kids can come and undo everything that you've put in. Other parents can undo everything that you've put in. The school system can undo everything that you've put in. And so we really invest time in making sure that our children know what is up in this world and what is up with other people. You see, our children think it's strange when other children misbehave in a certain way. Now, I'm not talking about just regular kid stuff, because our children do regular kid stuff too that get them in trouble, right? We don't allow hitting and all that stuff and name calling. We don't allow that kind of stuff. But I'm talking about that strange behavior that other children may do, okay? For instance, there was a kid who came over one time, and we had a rule, stay away from the pond, right? There was a young man, he came over and he rode his bike down into the pond, and he ended up falling into the water, you see? And he knew that we said you're not supposed to get in the pond or near the pond, and so he was real nervous. He was like, I don't want your dad to catch me in the pond, right? And so he hurried up and got out of there, because he knew that he did something he wasn't supposed to be doing. But our children thought that was strange. Like, why are you in the pond? Why did you do it in the first place? You see, they thought it was strange because they know the danger in certain things, right? And so if you're not training your children, if you think that children are just going to grow up and just be good all by themselves without any training, think again. Raising good children is not a mistake. It's not something that just happens, right? We've invested a lot of time into our children, and I'm not saying that our children are perfect, right? I am saying that what our children are able to accomplish and do and the way they behave is a result of how we have trained them and taught them, okay? And again, I must reiterate, we are not saying that our children are perfect, because they get in trouble just like every other child does who does something they're not supposed to do. We get on our children if they raise their voice at us too much. If you get an attitude with me, you're going to get in trouble. Simple as that. And our kids already know it. You watch your tone when you talk to mommy and daddy. You see, we are very, very serious about those things. So when I see other children saying to their parents, what? Huh? What? When I see other children doing that, I saw this one young lady speaking to her grandmother that way at the grocery store. And I looked at her, I said, you don't talk to your grandmother that way. Now, usually I don't check other people's children like that, right? But because I know the sister, she's an older sister, and she's someone who I have a great deal of respect for, my impulse just kicked in. And I told her, you don't talk to your grandmother like that. Now, she didn't say nothing to me, because sometimes children tend to respect others more than they do their own family sometimes. It's weird, but it happens that way. But she didn't say anything smart back to me. She just kind of turned her head down like this. But when I see children who are allowed to speak to their parents or their grandparents or any elders in that way, I look at the parents. This is something that they allow. They think it's normal. They think it's okay, and they don't check their kids on it. And so when people come around us, or when we take our children to various places, as a matter of fact, we just got back from Michigan about a month ago, and our family was talking about how well behaved our children are, how smart they are, how resourceful they are, and how helpful they are. And they were just, my brother-in-law was talking about how they were talking about the children, how everyone was saying, wow, their children are just so blessed, right? Now, I am not bragging, family. I'm not bragging. What I'm trying to say is raising good children is not something that happens by mistake. This is something that you have to really pay attention to. You have to really invest time in making sure that your children are going to be a certain way. If they get out of line, check them right away. If your children are doing something that you don't like or don't approve of, check them right away. Don't let them grow with that, and don't let them just get out of hand with things. Check them right away. Anyone who comes around us and see how our children are, just know that it's not by mistake that they behave the way they do and that they are so helpful. Our children cook. We all have days that we cook, right? Our older children have their days. The younger children have their chores. The older children have things that they have to do. And everyone is in line with what they must do. We work as a family unit, right? Mommy and Daddy have had our days of running around after little children, cleaning up different things. Now we have enough children to where we say, look, get this up off the floor, right? Go in here and take care of this. Do this, do that. We have enough children to where we're able to do that. Mommy and Daddy, we with our older children, we spent all of those years running after kids and picking up after them and doing this, that, and the other. Of course, with those who come into our office, for instance, little Yashiva being 2 years old, we make sure that we take care of certain things that she can't get. She can't put certain things in her mouth, and we tend to her differently than we would tend to the other children. And then even one of my other toddlers, we make sure that she's not climbing up on things to where she can fall and injure herself. But for the most part, our children are basically raised to be a certain way. You have to raise children. Even with the very young children, you can't allow them to do certain things. You have some parents who will let a 2-year-old hit them, and they think it's funny. You see, where they'll let a 4-year-old curse them out, and they think it's cute. In this household, our children know better. So raising good kids, raising daughters that will be good mothers, raising sons that will be good husbands and dads, daughters that will be good wives. Okay, can't miss that part, because if you're going to be a mother, you want to be a wife too. In order to do any of this stuff right, you have to be raised to know how to do these things. And so being a good wife is something that a woman is going to have to teach her daughters. You see, being a good husband is something that a dad is going to have to teach his son. These things will not happen on their own. You must train, you must teach, you must know. You see, too many people let the streets raise their children. They let the television raise their children, the school raise their children. If you are putting your children in the hands of people that are lawless and godless, trust me, your children are going to behave lawless and godless at some point. You see, unless they are just really, really strong. But you don't want to put them in a situation where they have to make that choice. Understanding how to raise children is very important. And this is why getting a biblical perspective and understanding is going to help you. You see, if you're sending your daughter out and she's dressed like a streetwalker, what are you doing? What are you doing to your daughter if you're putting her on public display for men? You see, you have to understand that what you invest in your children is what you're going to get out of them. You see, and so keeping as many outside influences from tarnishing their understanding or their perception is very important. You want to make sure that you are going to instill in them the values that they need to be good spouses, especially for your daughters. Make sure you're not raising a lazy girl who's going to sit back and do nothing and expect her husband to do everything. No, you don't want your daughter to be raised that way. Make sure that your daughter knows what is up and what time of day it is and what's required of her as a woman. The scripture says a wise woman builds her house, but a foolish woman plucketh it down with her hands. And if you are not doing what you're supposed to do as a wife, you are being a foolish woman and you are tearing down your own house. You see, so we just want to make sure that as women, as daughters of Zion, we are treating our husbands right and making sure that our daughters know and understand what that is. Now, I don't think that you should teach your daughters to just take anything from a man. You see, a lot of our daughters are sitting up in situations to where they're being abused, treated like trash, beat, talked to like they're nothing. First of all, this is why we think it's important that parents play an active role in who their children marry to begin with. If that dad has a conversation with that young man, and that mom has a conversation with that young man, vice versa, a young woman and who your son is going to marry, trust me, the parents should be able to have enough discernment to know if this is a good catch or not. You see, they should have enough discernment to know. And so, I hope I've said something that will cause you to think or rethink some things, especially for those of you who have allowed your children to get out of hand. You know if they're out of hand. You know if there are some things that your children do that you just don't like. If your children are behaving a certain way, dressing a certain way, acting a certain way, hanging around certain people, you need to make sure that, especially if they're young enough. Once they get too old, it's going to be a lot more difficult. But if they're young enough, get a grip on them and whip them into shape as soon as you can, because the older they get, the harder it gets to train them. This is why it says train up a child in the way that they should go, so that when they are old, they will not depart from it. Don't be so lazy to the point where you're shoving them off. We did a segment called Children by the Wayside. Don't let your children be children by the wayside. Train them up in the way that they should go. You see, and if you do that, they will come out as pure gold. Shalom, family.